Welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly podcast featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 206, we welcome special guest Natalie Cordone and Sean Kilgore. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice Anderson. I'm the host. I'm here today in 818 Studios with my producer.
Hello, everybody. This is Dave Croft. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 206 of the Authentic Spiritual Journey. As always, I want to welcome you to a brand new week. So glad that you have joined us, and it's going to be an amazing day. I feel it.
Amazing
I feel
day.
it in my coffee.
Yeah, I feel it in my coffee. That sounds like a jazz tune, Dave.
It does. I'll get to writing that right away. You have we have Simon there at UNT. That guy's a monster.
Yeah, he rocks it. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of rocking it, we have an awesome team with us today. Why don't you introduce our guests, Dave?
Oh, these are some of my absolute most favorite people on the planet. We have Natalie Cordone and Sean Kilgore of Cordone and Kilgore. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Oh, it's so good to see you. Obviously, if you don't know, Cordone and Kilgore are a vocal duo who perform all around Florida, and I know even into Las Vegas and
New York.
New York.
These guys have been all over. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have had the privilege of performing with them as both their drummer, percussionist, and music director. Multi-talented folks as they are, from the Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet tribute show that they have to Hooray for Hollywood. Was it you did a Hollywood show, right? And we did
did Stage to Screen.
Stage to Screen
was the Hollywood show, yeah. And then Hooray for Love, and we have I think we have 5 shows total that we've been traveling with over the past 10 years.
Yeah, and then the 80s show we're trying to get off the ground, the spruce goose that is the 80s show. But these folks are just amazing, multi-talented. Natalie is an actress, singer. You might have seen her on your television as well.
On your Netflix.
On your Netflix.
On your Netflix.
And Sean has been around stage here in Orlando and also at Universal. You used to be in the Blues Brothers show, right? At Universal?
Was, yeah.
That's so amazing.
For a while.
But these guys are fantastic, and we've been trying to get them on the show for a long time, and I can't believe it, but here they are.
Here they are, friends. Well, and what I love is that I've worked with you all as well in many settings, and I've come out and supported you. And I also, don't want to forget to mention that you've also done a lot for the elderly community in terms of your performing. And I think that's a population that gets left out. And what I know is that all the older people that I've served are big lovers of music, and music is such a connector. And, with my own mother's journey with Alzheimer's, at the end of my mom's life, she couldn't necessarily say a whole sentence, but she could sing a whole song.
Wow.
And
that's incredible.
It really was. And music touched her heart in such a way. So you probably weren't expecting me to go there first, but would love to hear about that and some of your experiences, because, all the various things you do, you just performed, I know, with Orlando Phil, and you guys are doing big, important things. But for me, that's one of the most important things you've done. It's not about the shiny lights and the whatever. I mean, those are all great things, but to me, that's the work, right? But the ministry that you do is the things like that not everybody sees, that are not all the fancy lights, but you're going out there and you're using your talent and you're using your music as a way to touch lives. So would you guys tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind?
Sure, absolutely. That's one of the most rewarding things, I think, out of all of the things that we get to do, is when we get to go into those communities and see how it affects the people. Natalie, I'm sure don't you have a story about how someone who was nonverbal Can you tell that story?
Yeah, I can. So I was doing, Sean was off working, doing another show, and I was doing a solo cabaret piece where we went to homes for people who weren't able to come to the theater anymore. And so this happened to be a space where adults with disabilities were all in community during the day together. Mm-hmm. And there was a gentleman there who was fairly young. He was probably in his like early 20s, I guess. And he was nonverbal. And I started singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow at the end of my solo show, and he started singing along. And everyone just we all collectively broke down. Right. In tears. And we also have had people who were pretty disengaged in terms of social interaction. They just weren't really comfortable in that setting, who would get up and start dancing with me during the show in the same setting, which was just incredible. And I just got back from Wake Forest, where they're also doing a project with neuroscientists about music, and how for Parkinson's, really, there's been a lot of work on how moving the body can also do that. And so bringing music and singing into that same realm has been really exciting, some of the work that they're doing. And so, for Sean and I to get out there and be able to sing for people who our population of our fans tend to be older, because the music that we sing tends to be from another days gone by, right?
Right. So, standards and Broadway and
exactly. And so that golden age of Broadway music was so glorious, especially for the voice, especially for voices like ours. And so as we go out, even to just 55 and over communities with people who are more vibrant than we are. We've performed out in a community called Sola Vida many, many times, and they run us under the table. I mean, we're like exhausted at the end of the day, and they're still taking stuff down and going out and grabbing beers afterwards. And we're standing there trying to catch our breath at the end of the day. So being inspired, I mean, they're equally as inspiring to us as we are to them. And I think that that's been a really incredible piece of what we've gotten to do over the years too. So it's been fun, that's for sure.
It's one of the best things, because in those situations, there are no stage lights. You're literally in like the rec room, you're able to really to make the connection with people far more than what you can do actually on a stage and in those moments. And I definitely think that those things that we get to do are the most rewarding out of all of the things that we do.
Well, and I wanted to mention it because, the thing people would first say about you would be, oh, yeah, you were just with Orlando Phil, you've toured, and that is all cool stuff. But, the older I get, the more I know that I've spoken in front of 2,000 people, but what matters is most in my journey is when I get to hear, something that was really impactful. So, and, for our listeners too, it's like, we all tend to think like whatever bigger thing is better. And of course we have to make money, and of course, success in the outer world is wonderful, but I think we can't forget the other pieces that we're talking about. I volunteer at a retirement community. The church I serve now is largely, it's probably 80%, and maybe it's going down a little bit, maybe it's 70 to 80% retired, and I love every second of it. There's nothing less about it, but I think culturally, we completely forget there's no appropriate cultural way to interact with that community. So I wanted to really lift that up, because it's something that you guys do that's always really touched me because of the level of talent. You're not just going in there and going, let's sing, Michael Row the Boat Ashore, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you're entertaining them and they get to have like a really cool experience. And as you said, also beautiful memories too. I think that it sparks. Now, I don't know if you guys have looked into anything. I love Tony Bennett, and he's had quite a journey with Alzheimer's. And I don't know how familiar you are with that, but he did perform recently with Lady Gaga, even though he cannot really speak. He can still sing. And that's been an amazing story.
I heard her say that there are days like where he doesn't really know who she is, but he can get through a whole song.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah, it's pretty
incredible.
miraculous. So I think music really for all of us has such a capacity to heal. And I think it's in many ways far more important than the spoken word, because sometimes, it does kind of transcend time. And so I wonder, as you guys are singing these older songs, what's your experience of that? Like, do you feel connected to a different time? What does it bring up for you in your journey?
Natalie?
I think that for me, it does feel timeless rather than being transported somewhere else. And it also brings people together in a way that I think only the arts can really do. It's a bonding agent between all of us, where you're remembering that, yes, we have to have our needs met. We need to, eat and drink and have our coffee in the morning, and we need to do all the things that are important to have us live. But minus beauty in the world, it's what's worth, living for. And and I think we really learned a lot about that during the pandemic, where we didn't have maybe the day-to-day interaction that we expected to have or that we were used to having.
Right.
And we turned to the arts. I mean, people turned to, you can joke about Netflix and Prime and all the books and the audiobooks and the, albums that people downloaded and Spotify and all that. But that's where, when you had the free time, what did you do? A lot of people turned to artists to say, hey, this is what I'll do when I have, in the absence of work, I want to find beauty and I want to find something that will stimulate me beyond my physical world right now. And I think having that moment on stage with people and getting to do it live is something it's inexplicable in terms of the energy in the room. And I think that's something that we all missed during the pandemic. And I know Sean and I missed each other dearly during this time, but also missed our audiences, right? Of getting to be out in that space where we have that energy moving between people, even non-verbally, by being in the same space and experiencing the same thing at the same time. And music, I think, just heightens that in a way that the different performing arts certainly can do it in different ways, but music has its own special way of making that happen.
Yes, and for me, I've always felt connected to the music of those eras. I've always felt like I maybe lived through those eras, or I was part of it. That's another episode, though. Right?
Past lives, past. Yes. Oh my. Right. Yes.
But so I've always felt, even from the time I was a very little kid, I remember we have an 8-track recording of when I was 4 years old, singing along to Barbra Streisand, and my sister trying to take the microphone away from me and me saying, "You can't sing, get out of here." Right? And so I'm like, and there I am just like belting out Barbara, at 5, so there was always a connection to older music.
That's really cool. Well, I grew up, I was going to ask you guys about that, your influences, because, I grew up in a real musical household, and many of my siblings are quite talented, and we kind of come from a music lineage. So there was just always singing around the piano. And so we grew up with everything from, church music, where we would just stand around the piano and sing hymns and parts, to classical stuff because of the piano and the violin of a couple siblings. But then we sang folk songs, and then our business was in the house, and then we listened to a lot of swing, so 20s, 30s, 40s, a lot of jazz, a lot of swing. And then as I was older, I found this show called Swing Years and Beyond on NPR. And so I just grew up kind of on the type of songs you sing. I grew up on Broadway, on classical, on jazz especially, and still have a fondness for all of those. So I was wondering about your influences musically.
Natalie?
Yeah, mine are a little different. Honestly, I grew up with a lot of Motown, a lot of sort of like 70s music to a certain extent, but mine was mostly 50s and 60s music. And I'm a child of the 80s. So that was the stuff that was coming at me on the radio all the time. And we had music on in the house a lot. The first thing I would do, I'm aging myself here, but as I would walk in the room, I'd flip on the radio, right back when you used to do that. And I just always had music on around me, but I grew up as a dancer. So my influence was coming from that direction musically, right? Where I forgot doing tendus and pliés to classical music all morning. But I didn't start really studying music seriously. I played the flute and the violin when I was young, and I started studying that way. But I didn't start singing until I was in my late teens. I was 19 the first time I took a voice lesson. Wow. So, which in our world is like ancient. I might as well have, come up with a walker into my first voice lesson. Sean, when was your very first like time on stage singing? How old were you?
I was probably 8 or 9, and it was in church. I mean, that's how I started, was in church, doing church plays, and Salty, the Psalm book, I think might have been my first.
You were in that? I was in that too.
RCA, have we talked about this? About why I'm a drummer is because my dad wouldn't let me be rhythm in Kid Praise 3, and he played Salty. Have we not talked about this?
I can't believe we were all in Kids Praise.
That's the whole reason I'm a drummer, is because I'll show you, I'll be a drummer. I wanted to play rhythm.
I sang Heaven is a Wonderful Place. Filled with glory and grace.
Yeah,
that was my little song, my claim to fame.
Have patience. Yep.
Or what about I'm the old man in the moon.
Oh my gosh.
And I know that the sun is coming soon. I can't believe you guys were in that show. That's nuts.
I've never even heard of it. So I am fascinated right now.
It was a subculture of a subculture.
Yes. Those are deep cuts, man.
You had to be in a certain kind of weird club to know about that.
Well, apparently in the Catholic Church, all I was doing was singing hymns from the back row, which is where I started singing. Literally from the back row in church. And I was so small, and I had a big voice, like I was a little tiny kid. And I had a big voice, and people would turn around and look at me, and it made me very, very self-conscious. And so I didn't sing in the choir. I literally sang from the back row of church, and that was it until I started taking voice lessons in college.
That is so funny. That is so funny.
Now she's up there belting out tunes with the style and grace of Edie Gourmet.
Oh, what can I say?
It's true. It's true, Natalie. It's impossible not to be attracted to you when you sing, because you're so beautiful in every way. It's clearly from your, it's clearly what you're meant to do. I would say the same for both of you, because every time I hear you guys together, there is a chemistry between you two, but then you each have your own, your own gift that you bring from, your varied experience, whether it's church music or dance or whatever, but something does come forward in a different way. You're not just singing, in other words. There's an energy that's present. And I think anytime somebody's on purpose, like when I'm up in Dave's studio, something happens. There's something, the scriptures would say, wherever two or more are gathered, there I am. But it's not only just, like I say, you two. There's something from center in you all about what you do. And that's felt. That's why you're able to minister, like you said, Sean, in the rec room or with Orlando Phil, because it's coming from your center. And that is, for me, that's really felt every time I've witnessed you, from a Christmas show to Broadway, and I've seen you both act as well. It's same thing, that it always seems to be present in your work, and you both really are very, it ministers when you're not trying to. You could be saying, something completely non-spiritual, but energetically something is happening. Right. So, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on. Well, I can't believe it's already time to take a break, and we'll talk a little bit more about your show as we come back right after these brief messages. Welcome back. We're glad you're with us. And, we have Sean Kilgore and Natalie Cordone as our guests today. And, I'm already loving everything you've shared with us. And I was thinking on the break about your influences. And Natalie, I wanted to go back to what you said. I'm still, this is going to sound over dramatic, I'm reeling from the information that you didn't take a lesson until you were 19.
That is correct. Yeah, it's a very odd journey.
Yes, it's completely unexpected. But if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about that. Basically, I did the show backwards today. Usually we start with, how did you get here? But I was right out of the gate going, I love you so much. So, tell us a little bit about that, how that happened and how you kind of followed that desire. I'm curious.
Sure. So I started, like I mentioned earlier, I started as a dancer. So I started dancing in a tutu on stage when I was 3, ballet, tap, and jazz, like you do.
Oh, yeah.
And I loved being on stage, and I loved dancing. I still do. And so when I was a kid, I started playing music. And I would sing from the back row of church, but that was really it. And I did all kinds of stuff when I was growing up. I was an ice skater. I dove with the Navy, like high springboard diving. I was a cheerleader. Yeah. I did all kinds of crazy stuff.
Wow.
I was a cheerleader. You name it. So I was in the marching band and I was a cheerleader. So I would literally shove my skirt into my marching band pants and go out during halftime in the football game and then come back out and cheer for the rest of the thing. I was a gymnast. I did a lot of stuff when I was young. But the one thing I would not do was sing. And it was because for me, it was and still is to a certain extent, which is why I love working with students, the most vulnerable way to express yourself.
I agree.
It takes literally so much air and it takes so much out of you to make that happen. And I'm always impressed and amazed with people who have that as just part of their daily lives. When I see people who are working and they're just singing along as they do whatever it is that they do, you will never find me doing that. For me, it takes a bit to make that all happen. And so I had wanted to sing, but I just couldn't do it. I don't know. I didn't have the gumption to get up there and do it. And so when I was in college, I had a girl who lived down the hall from me who was warming up vocally in her room. And I kind of went over and said hey, so how do you do that? Right. And I was in the theater. I had started acting when I was in high school, my senior year of high school. And I was in my very first musical I was in was Oklahoma. And I auditioned. I did sing for my audition. And I ended up as Dream Laurie, who is the one who doesn't sing. She dances. She comes out for Laurie after she sings. My friend Shoshana played Laurie. And I then came on, danced, and then exited stage left. So that was my first musical. And then in college, this teacher took me into her studio, and the very brief version of that story is that I was headed to the theater department. The music department was on the way. It was upstairs from the theater department. And as I headed to stage manage a show, my freshman year of college, they were having auditions. And so for the studio, so I sat down outside, talk about a spiritual experience. I sat down outside of this woman's office, and I said to myself, if I can still get to rehearsal on time, if she takes me in, I will try out for this thing. And if not, then it's not meant to be, and I'll just keep going. And she opened the door and escorted me in. And she was so kind, very, very, very intimidating because she's an incredible singer, an incredible woman, incredible teacher.
Right.
But I was so nervous that I cried during the lesson, and all she had me doing was singing scales. She was very kind. There was nothing intimidating about her except for her presence. And when I left, I thought, well, that was something. You did that thing. Good for you, right? But you'll never have to do it again. And then she took me into her studio. And she said, you should be an opera singer. And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. That's insane. Why would I do that? And then she developed my voice into what was an operatic voice in the span of 3 years. And I started doing musicals. And then I went off and I got my master's degree in acting and was still singing at that point. And then I became a young artist with the Orlando Opera.
Yes.
And yes, back when it was Orlando Opera, before they changed to Opera Orlando. And then I had decided at that point that for me, the connection with an audience was my most important way to give of myself as an artist. Mm-hmm. And so opera wasn't going to do that for me in the way that I wanted to, because I am not multilingual and I didn't want to move to Europe because that's where most of the young artists go for opera.
True.
And so instead I went, well, I have a love of theater, dance, and music. Let's do musical theater. That sounds like a good combo of all those things. So I moved to New York and started working on my musical theater skills. And then Sean and I met doing a musical, and then everything developed for me really in terms of producing our own shows and taking charge of our careers and being able to do things that we really thought were important in the world and that people needed to see. All because I met him, which again was only because a girl got pregnant, and in the show, the whole track of her character is that she can't get pregnant. She would have been 5 or 6 months pregnant when the show happened. And so I got to be Sean Kilgore's wife in the show because she got to have this beautiful miracle of life, and I got to have Sean in mine instead. So my career has been like littered
your own
with
big baby. You got your own big baby.
That's right. I couldn't ask for a better one. So my career has just been littered with all of these little ways that have been influenced by something much, much bigger and greater than myself.
Yes. Well, yeah, when you have so many divine synchronicities, what we love to call divine order, but it's like when you're at the right place at the right time and the right coach or teacher, comes forward, it's very clearly like, go that way, on your journey. But I do want to mention you didn't have to go that way.
True.
And so that was your spirit dialing in to, what we call God or the universe, or as I said the other day, the collective unconscious we call God, because I believe like artists, when they're creating from that collective unconscious. So I think you are, a very dialed into that energy. And I think too, it is an intuitive aspect, to you and to your journey, because you have to be able to know what is mine to do. And especially when you're a performer, you're right to say that. And I'm glad you did that. It takes a tremendous amount of energy, yes, but courage to stand up in front of an audience and do anything, to act, to sing, to speak, because there is a pretty big vulnerability to it, because you're having to say to them, I trust myself enough, that I can do this. So, and I think as the audience, some of us feel that. And that's why when we see someone up performing or, singing, and we're touched in a way, it kind of inspires us. So I think but a lot of these things are completely subconscious. Like we don't really know that's what's happening, but that's what's happening. But that's what I believe is happening. So, yeah, beautiful. Well, Sean, tell us a little bit about you, because I just learned, I can't believe you just learned something about Natalie you didn't know.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll learn something too about your early journey and how you got here. Well, you started that, but then we got a little off track earlier.
Well, that's all good. Yeah. So I started, when I was very young in church, being very active in the music program. And then when I was in 8th grade, my mom took me to the high school's production of Annie, and from the moment it started, I said, that's what I want to do. That's what and also, being a young, gay man at that time, not really sure who I was or what. I mean, there was something very appealing about living in somebody else's skin or becoming somebody else. So I think that's what I was really drawn to, especially as I did start to come to terms with who I was. My spirituality sort of fell away for a very, very long time.
Sure.
I mean, from the time I was really in high school and old enough to make my own decisions to stop going to church, because I knew in their eyes I was not, right, a good person or whatever.
You were not acceptable to God. I mean, right?
Yes, yeah, right. So then I just started diving into that world. And then from that point on, I auditioned for everything I possibly could. I did every single musical, every play, all through high school. Went to a conservatory of music for musical theater, the Baldwin Wallace Conservatory in Berea, which is a suburb of Cleveland. And then from there, went to the American Musical and Dramatic Academy in New York City. From there, moved to South Florida and worked pretty consistently, down there for a while until I moved to Orlando. And talk about being on purpose. Like, I really feel like my whole relationship with you, RCA, has just been completely on purpose. Like the way that I found CCU and the way that I found you, it started out as a gig, right? Our friend Kate O'Neill asked me to come sing with her. And from the moment I stepped foot in that church and in your energy, I knew I was home. And that was the first time that I had reconnected with my spirituality since high school, because I didn't know that unity existed. I didn't know there was something out there that would tell me that I am originally blessed, not originally cursed, that I am, that I am okay.
Right.
And so I remember, like, for the first several months I would be, and then I started, coming to CCU regularly.
Right.
And I remember just crying every single service, no matter what the message was, just because I felt so at peace and at home, and, back that I could get back in touch with that aspect of spirituality. And I feel like I've, then grown tremendously, both as an artist and both spiritually with you, and being able to support your messages over the years, and being able to continue working as a singer, and being able to connect with people in that way. And definitely another, I just feel like, definitely on purpose, meeting Natalie, that moment, the way, the circumstances of that happening, the circumstances of us creating the Stephen Eady tribute, right? We didn't plan for our very first performance of the Stephen Eady show was on August 10th of 2000. I'm not going to say the year right, but whatever it was the day that Edie Gourmet passed away, the anniversary of her death. We didn't plan it that way.
Right.
That's how it was booked. Happened to be booked on that day. So that was definitely something that made us feel like we were totally on purpose and on track with it, and we were doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Yes, beautiful. Well, and I fully believe their spirits were supporting you because, they want their legacy to live on, right? And that's how it does. It lives on in you. Well, and this morning, the funny thing, I was doing my little kind of centering time right before coming on. And I was coming out of meditation. It's like, you're going to see Stephen Eady today. I was like, oh my gosh, do not say that wrong, No, it's not Stephen Eady. It's Sean and Natalie. Get it right. But I do think that's a real testament to them and a testament to you too. And it does speak to how, we're all leaving a legacy behind, right? And so you're carrying on their legacy of music. And I'm always, thinking about in my work, and I always want to connect with people who are about leaving the world a little bit better than we found it. What's the legacy, we're going to leave. And I think it's really important. And I think the music you guys do is also that as well. It kind of keeps some of these things alive that, as you said, Natalie, they are timeless. Everybody understands a jazz standard about love. We all.
And well, I think that is one of the best things about the Stephen Eady story is it's very possibly one of the greatest love stories in Hollywood ever.
Right.
I mean, they met on the original Tonight Show in the 50s. They were, fell in love immediately together. 55 years, sustained a relationship, a marriage. 55 years of living together and working together. Nonstop. They were together.
Right. Yeah, it's really, that's really something. And they made it. Yeah. Yes. And they made it. Well, I'm having a great time with you on, but I wanted to hear, because I'm like, this is going to end soon. I want to make sure our listeners know a little bit about what's coming up for you. And I want to especially speak about your show, because you had Dave and I on, and we had a great time. And I think it's called just Live with Cordone and Kilgore, right? Yes. So tell us a little bit about that, because this is airing end of May, right? So I think you guys, like last month, like restarted some episodes, right? So tell me what you guys are doing with your show.
Natalie, you want to talk about how we got started with it?
Yeah,
that's
so
great.
during the pandemic, we desperately wanted to get together, and we were, finding ways on Zoom to see each other in all the ways that we could. Right. And we had one day where we were both we both knew that we'd been quarantined for long enough, and everything seemed like it was a good day for us to get together. And we had to record a video for a theater that we've done the Stephen Eady show at, for a Christmas special. And so we got together that day and recorded for the Christmas special. And when we were done with that, we went, well, we're already here. Let's sing some songs. And so we hadn't sung together in, I don't even know. It had been probably almost a year, which was insane to even think about. We'd never gone a year without singing together. And so we did this Russian roulette of songs where we just we got on Facebook and we said, hey, let's see what we remember. And so we would just put tracks on and we would start singing. And then we take requests sort of from the audience. And people were really digging it. And we expected to do it for, I don't know, probably 5 minutes, and it went on for an hour or something. And so after that, we both always, we love hosting and we both do it professionally. We hadn't gotten to do it with each other. And so we went, well, what about a podcast? What about doing a video podcast? And yes, Sean has these incredible skills that he sort of tucks in his back pocket of video editing and audio editing. And so he was willing to do all of that work. And so I went out and found some friends who were doing really great things. And Sean actually brought our first guests on. And our goal was to just highlight people who were bringing positivity into the world and who were bringing love and light into a time when it was really hard for people. And so we started interviewing guests, and we have had the best time having this opportunity to meet people from all over the world who were adding to the collective good in whatever way their skills and talents brought them to us. So we have interviewed everything from artists who have come on and sung, and dancers and writers,
small business owners, but the people who have started their own, bakeries or distilleries or those types of things. People who've made their dreams come true, who had a vision and manifested it, and so it's called Live with Cordone and Kilgore. There are episodes available everywhere you can get podcasts right now, and then we'll be starting to drop new episodes starting by May 30th. They will be out. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Great. Well, and I want to make people aware of it because one of the things I find myself saying often is, the daily news feed is for nothing other than getting us to buy into the latest trauma drama and to whip us up into fear. And so when I talk with people like you and, the show that we put out, I want to, when I say put down your phone, I don't mean don't listen to good stuff like what we're doing. What I mean is unplug from, the narrative that everyone's trying to convince you of. And that's why I think it's so important what you're doing with your music, with your performing, Natalie, both of you, with your acting and this show, because it's all about, giving to the larger community in a way that does lift people up, in a way that is positive. And we clearly don't need any more negative. And I'm not saying, we don't know what's going on in the world, but I'm concerned at the level that people are going against one another when we could sit next to each other in a theater, listen to the same song or watch the same show and feel connected. We could feel love. We could feel support. And then we want to go on Facebook and that very person we were just sitting next to, we want to make them bad and evil because they're different. So that's another reason I wanted to have you on. I think you're doing good work. And I want all of our listeners to know, these are the people I want you to start connecting with. These are the people to seek out, because we're trying to do something. We may not make the news headlines, but what we're going to be doing is impacting lives for the better, right? And I just feel, the more people that do that, the world could change and can change and will change but we have to like make conscious choices about the kind of people we're going to support and the kind of things we're going to invest our time in.
Amen. Absolutely. Can I just take a moment to say congratulations to both of you on the 200 episode milestone, and how proud I am of you both, and how awesome it has been to watch your journey with this. Has been, and I absolutely love it. It's
thank you.
One of the things that gets me through my week every week. So
thank you, and thanks for your support. Yeah, we had an amazing event a couple months ago, and it was really fun because some people that had been supporting me and had been taking classes and different things, because some of them started in the pandemic. I had never met them in person.
Wow.
And so, one woman came up to me and goes, like, is it really you? Can I touch you? And I said,
awesome.
I said, bring it in, And so I must have hugged her 3 or 4 times, like in about a 2 or 3 hour period, because it was just such a wonderful reconnect or connection, in person. And I know many of us are still kind of coming out of the pandemic going, is it really safe? So yes, that was wonderful. And I'm thrilled to be on this journey with Dave. And as I said at the event, I have a real trust of him, and our relationship is not unlike you two in that, in that we have a wonderful working relationship, a love and respect for each other. And I hope, and I think it is felt, by our listeners.
Absolutely. It is. Yeah. Without a doubt. Feel like you're hanging out with friends every time. Yeah. That's what I always say about listening to it. Like, especially for me, like knowing you guys, it's like having you in the back seat. Like, all right, where are we going?
Right. Exactly. Well, Sean and Natalie, thank you so much for being with us. As always, you guys are a blessing, and thrilled to let our listeners know, about what you're doing. And thank you for sharing a little of your journey with us. And as always, dear friends, to our listeners, thank you so much. We are always grateful that you listen, even more grateful when you share it, and always honored to receive your support and your trust on the journey. So we hope to see you very soon, and blessings on the journey, dear friends.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2022, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission from RR Hot Publishing. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.
Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The SoulWorks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. SoulWorks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the SoulWorks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.